So anyway, you recall we have a choice of who we want to take into this final chapter as our main protagonist. And after much hinting by me on who my preferred order is, you guys kind of went with my top choice, Sundown. Who is probably not the top choice to do this overall. I just find it more fun with him for various reasons. No, if I would have been smart, the big money would have been on taking my level 33 character in to start this, but you know, never ever claimed I was smart. So anyway, a few notes about this dungeon that we will be getting this chapter. Also having a bad day. Ugh. And everybody seems to be having bad days lately. I hope it gets better. But a couple notes about this chapter. One, we start with whoever we pick here, and that character becomes pretty much a permanent party member at this point. The after that, you will end up alone, and you will have to wander around, fighting enemies. Kind of the reason I did not want to begin this chapter with the wrestler. Cube would have been okay, but he really lacks power, so he can't really beat anyone. No. Oboro would have been a really good choice to start out a chapter because he's strong. Akira couldn't beat a single enemy here by himself if he had to. And Pogo would have been a really strong choice. I'm exaggerating on him, but you know, it's just one of those things that even if you picked the girl and had the strongest possible character at the end of that chapter, you're still not going to have a really strong protagonist in the student. Sundown, however, is a glass cannon. But I want to show off all these, just because each intro becomes slightly different for each character. So I probably should have shown this one off last, but you know. So Sundown just riding along, and suddenly we get demon speech from the sky. And he just kind of plucks Sundown from his horse, which is going to be a very confused horse in a minute. And drops us off in this big black void, which we can walk in any direction. And there will be some very quiet sounds in the background. And now little bits and pieces from the various places we've been. I'm just turning this up quite a bit for this part. So we get this little trippy thing here. However, not much is changing. So let's go a different direction. Now look, here is a solid thing that sticks out in the middle of all this darkness. And it drops us off next to Hash's cabin. Yes, that Hash's cabin. Basically, the demon has come along and transported Sundown to the Middle Ages. And thus the chapter begins with you wandering around kind of all by yourself. However, just to show off the other people, so kind of a rehash, yes. Also, boo. But anyway. But just to show off what the other characters get to go through here. Pogo here wakes up from something. And instead of you who gain fame as a hero, you who gain the illusion of love. And once again, you have to go through this. We can sprint. Probably recommend it if you're doing this. And every now and then you get stopped when it decides to put the staircase in there. So Pogo gets dropped off in the field of the healing plants here. And Akira we're just going to go around the circle. You may remember this scene from the very beginning and end of the chapter, basically. Now see, I absolutely love the music he gets for his chapter. It's just the shame they made the character so freaking terrible combat-wise. You who gained bravery from your anger. Yeah. And once again, he has to make the trek. And it's putting the stairs down so we can go up. And basically begin in Lucretia Village. I think that was the name of this village. The little bitty place where the Orsted worshipper boy was. Anyway. So these two were talking at the rooftop from the end of their last chapter. You seek to shape the path of history. So, admittedly, there is not a lot to any of these. How is nobody else seeing what? How, I mean, all the people with them? They may see it for all they know, yeah. They may see it. I mean, especially with Akira being in front of everybody there. Well, technically his arc has lasted the whole game. And, you know, Odio not happy about having all of his minions beaten. Because that's essentially what those were. They were just, you know, minions beaten. I can't actually recall if it gives you those songs. And just to let you guys know, there are bits and pieces in here I will need to look up a map. Because there are a lot of dungeons we're going to have to go through soon. And, the pupil here basically ends up next to the hero's gravestone. And Cube, who really didn't do a whole lot, if you think about it. I mean, you know, he's only been alive for a couple hours, really. All he did was play a video game to stop the ship from killing him. And if you are actually sad about singing Ninja Tank, the singing Ninja Tank will live on in our hearts forever. And Cube ends up on the castle balcony up here. And Mr. Battlecry stands over his fallen opponent. Dude, not Pokemon. But before he can take on his new challenger there, and we end up in prison. I mean, luckily the door's open and all, but still prison. So that is actually what happens to each character at the conclusion of their chapter. So what does this mean for Sundown here? I made the mistake and we're going to watch this twice. Yep, something like that. Meow. And again, confused horse. That poor horse. So, what we've seen, what exactly does it mean for poor Sundown here, who is kind of all by himself? Well, it means that we can actually go recruit the other heroes to join our party. Our party can be a maximum of 4. But one thing that's going to be kind of annoying is that we are going to get attacked constantly, no matter how many people we have on our party. It's just having more people get you stronger enemies. And having higher levels get you stronger enemies. But if you recall the locations of where everybody got dropped off, you can remember, you can figure out where to recruit the other party members. In this case, we're awfully close to the student here, the new master. And on a side note, to recruit the master, you might have to do different things depending on who you made the main student. So we're going to take him along with us. But just on a side note, if you had made Samo the student who inherited the title, you would have had to go get 5 things to eat for him before he would join you. And if you had recruited Lee, you would have had to fight her. And yes, you can recruit all 8 and switch out everyone as needed. But also, we need to search the tombstone to get the sword, the hero sword. And then, since we are up here, see if I can find the sparkle. Ah, we need to grab this. Sundown looks at it and thinks it's just some sort of iron box. So we grab it. And I do this now because we will need that to recruit one very specific party member. But notice how much damage they're getting from here, and we have, like, no healing items. First by... They're technically not going to give you enemies that you have no chance at beating. But if they do, there is always the option to run. Although, you gotta be careful with running. At least for now, running is probably not a really good idea. I mean, it's not the worst thing in the world if you have to run. But until you've geared up a bit, there's a very good reason to not run a whole lot. Because you only have limited amount of times you can run. And I will explain more about that as we get into the part where it becomes relevant. so good, these things. Okay. And just basic attacks. I mean, I'm not going to worry too much about the getting into fights for experience here, because that's what I spent most of most of my playtime over the last week worrying about. So now... And I guess it's honestly not going to matter if I run from every fight here, because it's all going to be wiped out soon enough anyway. Where is that spot? I can never remember exactly where the spot to get down to that field of healing plants is. So the Field of Healing Plants has a Pogo who's just kind of running around until he sees us. Then he goes and hides. But if you recall from the earlier chapter, Orsted's chapter, we can leave this screen and come back to get more healing plants. Which, honestly, there's a good chance I'm going to need in a second. And you can just barely see Pogo's legs sticking out of that tree down there. If you look, you can just kind of see it twitch every now and then. Let's get a handful of these healing plants before I try this. And then, just because everything can still go pretty much sideways, we go over here. We poke him, and he goes, and runs off again. And we can't see where he's gone. It's actually much harder to find him. There he is. So we kind of saw him move behind these trees over here. And this time he's going to run out in the open field and just kind of scamper around. At which point he will finally fight you. So now we have a somewhat beefed up Pogo. That we actually have to beat. And Sundown's main problem, he does not have a lot of hit points to soak up damage with. Luckily, Pogo is going to remain somewhat, static. and only do that every now and then. So we just need to keep hitting him with double shot. At least until he gets off another one of those screams. And I have had fights with Pogo where he actually gets aggressive and actually will come up and start using his good techniques on you. So I guess I'm kind of lucky that he just doesn't try to go all out against Sundown here. And on a side note, if your martial arts inheritor is Lee, the girl, he'll just kind of join without a fight. Pogo will. He won't beat up the girl. So Pogo is level 18 and has a ton of freaking hit points. But just because we still have the cola bottle with us, which is probably going to do a lot of saving us fairly early on. Yeah, these streams do seem to bring a little bit of luck, don't they? That's 3. And we should know roughly where the other 4 are. Although one of them we will not be recruiting yet. If I can remember how to get to... Oh, look, the bear. The bear is kind of mean, as you see. However, we can cheese out a lot of these fights against the bigger enemies, at least at first. They will start throwing enemies at us that we are not strong enough to do that to. And unfortunately, we can't read the signs to tell us where we are because they're kind of splattered with blood. So, let's go use that. And Sundown gains a level. Triple shot gained. And yes, we will be fighting enemies from all time periods here. As weird as that looks, we're going to ignore it for now and just kind of remember that this spot is here. But Sundown just saw a horse run into the underbrush there. We'll remember that for later. But right now, we just kind of want to ignore it. That is the sign that leads to the Demon's Lair, if you recall. And you may also recall when Oboro got trapped here, he kind of dropped down in front of that sign. If we were to touch that sign, Oboro would drop down on us and fight us. We're not big enough for him. He will absolutely slaughter us. At least right now. And as I did not need to level him up, when I do the thing that cuts us forward in time a lot, I still will have not recruited him because I will have not needed to. Yeah. But just to show you how tough this guy actually is. Okay, you hit the wrong one, but still. Use Pogo's ultimate attack to actually hurt him. Might be the only way you can actually kill him easily without using the, Yeah, Oboro is level 33 and is freaking tough. Technically, Pogo is also freaking tough. Just not as freaking tough as Oboro. And yeah, they're going to be very annoying. And also, on a side note, you recall when we did Akira's chapter that you had a whole bunch of robotic enemies that if you beat them, you could get power parts from them? Yeah, the same holds true here. Robotic enemies that have kind of a master that all break down if you beat them, you know, that if you beat the master before you beat them, they can drop power parts. Which you will need. You will need about another 79 of them to fully power up Cube. However, because I don't feel like doing that right now, it's just in these fast. I think that was the mountain. You guys should know by now that my sense of direction is absolutely terrible. So I may, you know, run around and go up the wrong path many, many, many times. I'm hoping it'll show. I'm hoping I'll run into the enemies that I absolutely hate now, so I don't have to do it later. There's some enemies called pistachios who are, shall we say, the worst. I will demonstrate what they do more when we run into them. Pistachio, like the nut. Okay, good. Now you may notice we have access to the town inside the castle for the first time. It's kind of useless to us at the moment. But what isn't useless... Yeah, I gotta go around here. What isn't useless is we can now pick up all the little weapons and armor and everything we left on the walls. Because if we had picked it up during Orsted's chapter, it would not be here. So if you leave it alone then, you will, you can get it now when you actually are going to need a bunch of different things to upgrade equipment and such. Of course, Masaru, since he's been here, has just been strength training and calisthenics work. Unfortunately, Masaru's critical flaw for the early part of his game, he's a whole whopping level 2. So, not exactly the best character in the game. And he makes special note that I didn't think there'd be a gunman here. Because with 5 out of the 7 characters, you show up here, you've got to fight him to recruit him. He's pretty freaking easy because he's level 2, and I think he goes down in one hit to just about anybody's level 16 technique. But if you are led by Sundown or Cube, he will just kind of join up. And of course, he has literally no equipment on except a bandage. Everybody else at least has some semblance of equipment. He has absolutely nothing, and we have nothing really for him. Except the cola bottle, which we need to keep as an item. But we now have our group of 4. And now, let's grab some healing items. Grab a little bit of equipment. Fight a little bit of enemies. And you notice there are a lot of enemies. These are basically the barbarians from Pogo's chapter. And they're here whether or not you dealt with him. Whether or not Pogo's in your chapter or not, in your team or not. But just to speed this along. Not that these guys are terribly tough. But I do not have a lot of group attack stuff at this point. And everybody, as they get up to level 16, will continue to gain various equipment. So that was the armory that we passed up before. So first, let's not equip the Nightmare Helmet. Give him some decent armor. Now that I think about it, everybody needs a unicorn horn. If we have extra, we do not. But the unicorn horns provide some immunities and such that we need to take advantage of. That's one of the things we're mainly going to be focused on in getting our equipment. The various equipment we will plunder throughout this chapter is largely grabbed because of the immunities it grants. Not that it's specifically ultimate powerful or anything, even though that equipment does exist. But we're mainly just trying to raid enough equipment. I can't hit anybody with that here. And yeah, quad shot is kinda strong. It's not his best attack, but it is one of the strongest you can get at this point. His level 16 attack is kind of amazing, but it also can be one of the most disappointing things you'll ever use, because it's semi-random. And just in case you're wondering, Masaru still has all the techniques that you picked up during his chapter. Which means that if you picked up the Abyss Giri, the Suda, the German Suplex, and the Max Bomber, if you level him up, he's going to become a pretty good tank and debuffer. So yeah, you really needed to pick those up during his chapter. Which is why I reset after even though I won a few fights. And you're going to recognize some of these enemies as being from the finale. The finale, you know, the Orsted chapter, as he made his way towards the demon. And poor Sundown is basically KO'd now. However, we do have some healing items with us. We don't have a good healing character yet. Just in case you forgot why Suda is important. Because of that. Because it just destroys enemies' stats. And just in case you're wondering, even though you saw two characters go down there pretty hard, not really a threat, because Pogo pretty much could have finished that fight by himself. Could be. They could work for whoever the demon is. I really need to change my formation and put Pogo in front. And she's gonna zonk him. Take him out of the fight completely. That's gonna get rid of Sundown for this fight. And that missed. Okay. Okay, there we go. Now that we've pretty much looted the castle here. Oh yeah, these things. So, those mustard dragons are a gang leader, essentially. And if you take them down, you will take down all the various groups with them. But of course, if you beat the groups before you beat them, then you get the nifty stuffs. You get the power parts, and you get other things that drop from these creatures, I guess you could call them. But those faces are kind of annoying in the fact that they'll spin around. And as they spin around, you'll get different things that keep hitting you. And unfortunately, Masaru only being level 3, level 4, low level, just however you want to think about it, is not going to be the most accurate character right now. But he is going to gain a whole lot of hit points fairly quickly. Kind of amazing the castle looks as nice as it does, considering it's been abandoned and there was a slaughter here. Let's speed up this process. So we can go out here to find Cube, who, in his own chapter, doesn't have a problem. But right now, he doesn't actually have a power source. And the thing is, Sundown's looking at this and goes, huh. It's round and made of steel. Looks like it opens up. Whereas if you have, I think, Masaru or Akira, they will both kind of recognize, hey, this is a robot. Hey, look, a battery compartment. And instead of Sundown and him saying, iron box, when you pick up the shiny, they will recognize it as a battery pack. So, yeah, everyone else is like, what the hell is this? But Masaru and Akira are both kind of understand about robots being from futuristic and modern timelines. But you plug in the battery in Cube joins you and is the best healer in the game. And for now, we will kick out the Yuan. And if we want Yuan again, he will be waiting up at the mountaintop.